Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Playful Humans podcast. I'm your host, Mike Montague, and my guest this week is a creativity coach and speaker. It's not that Julia Roberts, but Julia Roberts from decodingcreativity.com. She also has a new book out you can check out, Write Without the Fight. So we'll be talking about dealing with writer's block and how you unlock your creativity and decode that. I am super excited about this one. If you want to learn more about Playful Humans, go to playfulhumans.com. You can join a playfulness club. You can help rediscover your own playfulness as well, which I think is a key to unlocking some of that creativity. Here we go.
Chair dancing.
One more woohoo. All right, that was some quality chair dancing there, Julia Roberts. Our joke of the week is brought to you by Stairs. I'm not a big fan of Stairs. They're always up to something. But we have a joke of the week. The joke of the week was, what did Kermit the Frog do when his car died? Any ideas?
Ribbit. I don't croaked. No, I don't know. What did he do?
Well, he needed a jump, but when that didn't work, he had it towed.
Okay.
All right, there we go. The Kermit the Frog joke
Joke's out of the way.
Get that out of the way. Okay, let's talk about what you do with Decoding Creativity as a creativity coach, because I think this is something weird. I talk about this with Playful Humans all the time, that creativity is something we're born with. We are born with genius levels of creativity. And then somehow we lock it up and we get all twisted along the way, that by adulthood, only like 3% of people can do anything remotely creative. Why is that, and how do we unwind that? So I guess that's a big question, but I'll just leave it open for you. What's the deal with creativity?
Well, I would 100% agree that everybody's creative. Every single one of us is creative. It's what makes us human. It's what distinguishes us. I create, therefore I am. Because creativity is used in every problem solving that you go through each day, every decision you do each day. All those things require your creativity. So you can't say to me, as people do, I don't have a creative bone in my body. That is just trying to repress something that is inherently you and something that is brilliantly you. So let it come out, let it be, and then there's definitely degrees of creativity. So people listening to me who are, screenwriters that have sold a ton of stuff or whatever, award winners, Grammy winners, there's definitely degrees of creativity. I wouldn't argue against that. So there's the big C, middle C, which is people who earn a living creatively, which would be like me and you, not famous, but we're middle C. And then little c, which is considered everyday creativity, making a brilliant soup or sewing and creating at home, or I don't know, creating a game for your kid or creating voices when you're reading a book to your child. Little c, right? And that theory of big C, middle C, little c comes from Csikszentmihalyi, which is how you pronounce that weird word, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, who is a creativity theorist. You've probably heard of him. He just
and he talks about flow and all kinds of
flow is his big
there. And I feel like I apply that to playfulness too. When I'm in a playful state and I'm hosting a game show or something, I'm definitely in a flow state, and some of those creative things are unlocked. When I ask somebody a question, I asked a guy for a consonant the other night when we were playing the Wheel of Fortune game, and he said North America. I definitely got to get creative with my answers and how I can, build him up and make him feel safe, but also get everybody else a good laugh with that one. And so I think all of those are intertwined, but creativity is one for me specifically that I was excited to talk to you about, because I think there are a lot of misconceptions on what it actually is. So for me, I think about things like, when you have a blank page and you got to fill it in with something, that's a little bit different challenge than what I always considered my creativity, which is like problem solving or taking different pieces from different places and combining them into a new form. So like, I don't make up words or things, but so every word I've used in this podcast so far, somebody else made up, but I'm arranging them in a way that is unique to me and communicating a message that I created. And then there's like this third level of creativity for me, which I find like so brilliant, is when there's like changing the scope of the question. And my dad really was this. I'll give you a quick story here because it's one of my favorites. But when I was a really small kid, like maybe 4 or 5 years old, there was a bully at school that kept taking the toy that I wanted to play with. And my dad said, "Oh, that's easy. Don't cry about that, Mike." He said, "Just tomorrow when you go back to school, find a toy you don't want to play with and pretend like it's the coolest toy in the room and just act like you're having a whole ton of fun with it. When he comes over to take that one, then you go pick out the toy you actually wanted to play with." And that sort of creative problem solving, I find kind of genius level creativity. There was another story where like some blocks and stuff on the table didn't fit against a wall, and there was no way to arrange the items to fit. So what we had to do was move the table, not move the stuff on the table. And that to me is creativity. That's an awesome creative problem solving. How do you think about the different types of creativity?
Well, I mean, those really are the big C, middle C, little c. And little c is every single day problem solving. And people don't really think of that as creating and creativity, whereas you recognize the genius of changing the scope of the question, which is a specific creative ability. Your dad had a strong clarifying ability, right? Like he could question the scope and inquire beyond this. A quick story on that would be like when somebody was trying to get in the 70s, bring down the cost of shipping because it was killing the economy. So the shipping, they're just trying to get the ships to go faster and faster and faster. And they, trim this and change this. And, a lot of money went into trying to make these ships go faster. When they changed the scope of that, they said how to make it cheaper or how to make it easier. They developed container shipping. And the ships didn't have to move faster. The port moved faster by a lot. Wow. So you see what I'm saying? Like sometimes, yes, you just have to back up and ask yourself a different question. And that is creativity. There's 4 major ways of thinking, and that particular strength is clarity. And it's a cool ability. It's one I kind of don't have.
I love that. Do you want to talk about the other 3, or do you want to talk about creative block? Because
let's go to the 3 and then we can go into block, because then I can use it as examples. But okay, so clarity is one we just discussed. Really just the whole scope, the whole opportunity, really narrowing. It's diverge and converge. And those really are the 2 inhale and exhale of creativity. So allowing yourself to diverge, think of all the problems that it could be, and then converge this particular way forward. So that's clarity. And then ideation, which is really diverging, right? Like hundreds of ideas, thousands of ideas. Pushing yourself, even if you're not an idea person, to have weird and unusual ideas, and quantity, pushing yourself for quantity. Because what a lot of people who are not strong ideators do is just stop as soon as they have a reasonable idea. And if you want those original weird ideas, push, And then there's structure. So you have these ideas. What are you going to do with those? What are the challenges? What are the ideas? You've already converged perhaps to the ones you want to do, but you still have to put them in a structure of some sort. And that's not always, as writers, like the point story arc or whatever, but as anybody's, we all have to find a structure for, it's going to be a soup, or it's going to be a salad. It's going to be and then finishing energy is, and finishing thinking is opportunistic, is now you're not playing by the same rules. You're not focused on making it happen. You're taking it into the world in some way. So this little cycle of thinking, which is kind of like, spin, wash, rinse, repeat, is the exact same process that goes on in your head, whether you're just trying to come up with something that rhymes with Bob, or a chapter title, or a whole big project, like how to get that bully to quit bullying you. You know what I mean? So that's just an observed process. It's what your brain does. It's not something you should do. It's something you do. So if you blocked, which is what we were going to go to next, the likelihood is that you're stuck between phases, or you have a phase you don't appreciate or do well. You have some that you really love, that your energy goes way up with it. You get in the zone, and then you have some that cost you a lot. So you dread those. So you either are stuck because you dread those and you don't know how to do them very well, or because you're skimping them and your process isn't going to come through very well, or you're just hanging out where you're happy. I want more ideas. I love ideas, Yeah.
Oh,
So,
yeah, that's a good point. Now,
yeah.
obviously, there's a ton of stuff to unpack there. You wrote a whole book on it. But I'm just going to be selfish and ask some of my questions
Yeah,
because I do feel like I definitely have some affinity to things. I mentioned the structure, and once I am, whether I'm writing a speech or a book or a podcast or a blog post, I have, kind of benchmarks. And I found like once I get those milestones in place or that outline down, then I'm free to just kind of improv inside of that. And it kind of just flows out of me. I don't get blocked because I'm just going, oh, what's the next thought or idea? Let me explain that in the language that I would use every day anyway. I mean, we don't get, speaking blocked when we're talking to our friend or something. So for me, I'm easy, like once I get that structure. And I have some of the clarity that you were talking about with my father that I like to, I also don't get started until I have that really unique idea that redefines the problem, because I don't, I'm somebody that values uniqueness. Maybe I don't want to write the book that somebody else wrote. So the one I did really well was the LinkedIn, the Sandler Way book. I found, this was like 8 years ago, that there were a ton of books on how to market on LinkedIn, but there weren't any books for salespeople. And so once I realized that, I was like, okay, I have an idea. If I'm not trying to blow up and be Mr. Beast with 100 million followers, if I'm trying to just connect with one human being, how is that different?
Yeah.
Boom, that's the hook. Now I have that. I can create these structures in the chapters. And so I have, how do you create your profile? Then how do you search and find people? Then how do you reach out to them? And then how do you turn that into an actual sales conversation? Once I have those 4 buckets, I have everything that I need. I'm just filling in ideas at that point, and it really works. But I guess where I get stuck sometimes, I was trying to think about is the stuff that I don't like maybe, or I struggle with, is the ideation of, I don't come up with 100 different options for that. Right. I feel like I'm a collector of ideas, not necessarily like the source or the fountain of those ideas. Is that fair?
If it's fair, I mean, you know yourself better than I do. Yeah. But also I think people then feel judged and judge themselves for having that weakness or struggle, whether it's weakness or not. You probably are fine with ideation when you give it the time, but you probably lose energy when you try and do it. Or you just have an internal dialogue that just goes, oh, find an idea. This is ridiculous, or that kind of thing. Because your strength is clarifying and structure. So my strength is ideation. I was a brainstormer for 25 years. I could sit in a room all day long and just come up with ideas for the 7 clients who got marched in with graphics. We're doing this. We're doing this, And I was like, why isn't everybody just doing this? This is the fun part, And they're like going back to their office and taking angry phone calls. It didn't make any sense to me, but the reason is some of us just have different areas where we're really good and where we really enjoy it, where it gives me energy.
That brings up an interesting question that I think applies to almost everything in life. But do you personally believe that people should shore up their weaknesses, or maybe find some techniques and things to improve or make that easier? Or is that something like, hey, let's outsource the ideas to Julia, and then let's outsource the structure to Mike, and then we'll find somebody else that's really detail oriented, like an editor, to do the finishing on it, or a ghostwriter to lay out all of the stuff after they interview Mike and Julia? What do you feel like is maybe the easiest / best way, if we're not all going to be good at all of the things?
So, I mean, a little bit that's about budget. Okay. So if I'm doing big corporate clients, they can afford to just have me at a solid hourly rate coming up with ideas, right? So in my real life, that's how come I really came up against it, because all of a sudden I had to do clarity. And to be honest, when clarity was going on during a brainstorming, I would like stomp my feet and roll my eyes. It was boring. Should have been done before I got there,
Exactly.
So the very help I needed was the help I would basically have shooed away, because I also had this little feeling down inside me that they would figure out I'm bad at this and I should be good at it. Or I should at least get the meeting to where I'm valuable and really, as soon as we get to chaos, I'm in charge. That was just my old, when I was in brainstorming. So So the thing is, if you can outsource every single thing and you do everything in a team, more power to you, you know? But we all do these things anyway, whether or not we do them well or whether or not we appreciate being in that phase. Part of it is we just don't like being in that phase. We dread it. We lose energy. We feel bad. So part of it is working on your mindset so that you're okay with clarity. It's not going to make you look like an ass. It's not going to kill you. It's not for me, you know, it's not, it's, you know, and you can see, like you just say, that's the genius. And like anybody who's sitting around like me might go, I don't do that. You know what I mean? You can't let your ego define you based on what you don't do. Your ego should define you based on what you do well. And then you should get a tool, a darn tool to get through those other phases effectively. You don't have to live there, but you do have to do them. So you want to get through them effectively.
I love that. You help me kind of remind myself too that I create traps for myself specifically on the finishing. That for the LinkedIn book I wrote, LinkedIn actually picked it up themselves. So they said if it's done by August 15th, we'll push it out to 80,000 subscribers of Sales Navigator on LinkedIn. And I was like, deal. Now, guess what I have to do? I have to write the book, right? Like there's 80,000 people now waiting on me. That external motivation got me across the line.
That's other a really good tool. Really good tool. Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to say the other times, I know you have a writing group, so it's fun to write with others and it's not putting me on the spot as much, but it is giving me some sort of light accountability, but also like that inspiration that other people are doing it, more internal motivation. And the biggest one I found for me, if you haven't noticed with the podcasts that I do or the live shows that I do, it's when I do it live, I don't have a choice. This podcast was happening whether I like to or not. So now that we're in the middle of it, it's not like I can rethink or stop or whatever. And once I get in that flow of being live, I find a lot of stuff comes out. So if I can just record that, then I can have somebody else put all these thoughts together. Or I can go back and listen and go, what were the big key points of that? And so I found a live trap to be a really good way of getting me into flow. I'm imagining you have a bunch of other things that you do. So in Decoding Creativity or in the book, Right Without the Fight, I guess I feel like the LinkedIn trap for me is a little bit of fight. I know I have this deadline, it's motivation, and it's more maybe anxiety motivation.
So you might fight that. Power. Yeah, you might be fighting that because you're afraid it'll be hard to meet, you know?
That was me in college, right? Yeah. I wrote the whole 3-page paper on the night before it was due. You know what I mean? I might think about it for 3 weeks, but I would actually sit down and write it the night before.
I mean, when's the last time you pulled an all-nighter? College. That's resistance. So resistance comes maybe when you're about to do the part you don't like to do, but maybe just in general, like ego, fear, you know, whatever. You can literally, it lives right here. You can literally just ask it to step off your sensor and just say, I'm safe. I just, you know, just give me a minute and it'll come back, but it'll give you that little reprieve if you need to sit down and do something. There's a lot of tricks and tools. I'm not going to say I developed them because there's been 70 years of scientific practitioners developing, researching, testing language and tools that help our brain change in relation to what we're trying to do. And I'll demonstrate one for you, you know, because it's really easy to do. So you just said to me, what? I have to finish. Go ahead and say that sentence. I have to do this book by August 15th, I think it was, right?
August 15th. There's a whole, 80,000 people waiting on me. Yeah.
Boy, a whole lot of crap behind that sentence, right? Just pushing into your, so change the sentence and say, how might I write this book by August 15th?
Yeah.
Now, how does that feel?
Write that book by August 15th.
How does that feel, that change?
Yeah, I love that possibility thinking then that depending on how far away August 15th is, we're at a different time of year now, but it could be, you know, one chapter. So I had 10 weeks. So I was like, that's one chapter a week. I ended up getting ahead of the ball because you get into flow. And once you start writing things, that resistance goes away and stuff. But you start thinking of, okay, well, that's not terrible. I don't have to pull any all-nighters if it's 10 weeks away.
From the bottom of your brain, which is like the fear-oriented, to the problem solving part of your brain by using the word might. It's just a strong, it's why I call my club the Mighty Writers Club, because it's just a really strong shift. It shifts you without your consent, even from the fear brain or the gator brain or lizard brain, people call it sometimes, into your neocortex, which people call the story brain sometimes. So all of a sudden you're problem solving, and the problem that was causing your, you just relax and you start thinking, oh, I have an idea, I could do that. It just changes it. So that kind of tool has been developed by scientific practitioners the 70-something years. And I've cataloged quite a few of them in my blog, which is at decodingcreativity.com. And there's a bunch in Right Without the Fight. And of course, I teach them in my programs.
I love that. Now, I wanted to know a little bit more about you before we wrap up here. So tell me, have you always been a writer? Did you find creativity in some other way? Then you mentioned, corporate experience and other stuff. Has being a playful, creative human always been part of you and your personality, or did you lose it somewhere along the way and have to rediscover it? What was your story?
Probably I'm so playful. I was only employable in odd ways.
I love that answer. Yes.
And yet I had a successful corporate career, but primarily I landed on strategy and brainstorming because it used what I had to offer, and it let me dress casually, crack jokes. In fact, it's required for that phase of creativity. The later phases of creativity, like structure and finish, require focus and quiet and perfectionist. And when I was done with the brainstorming, the people who went back and took angry phone calls and things would also say, go home. We'll do the grown-ups are going to do the work now, because that's what they consider the creative work, right? But I was always out there enough that I could do these weird things, and I did do that structured work sometimes, but others were better at it. So as my career progressed, I had a broader portion of brainstorming and a smaller portion of developing plans or pitching clients or that kind of thing. So for me, you say, designing a playful life. Once I got my master's in creativity, which I really did think was just going to have me facilitating brainstormings, which I did for a while with corporate clients. When I moved out to LA, which I did 7 years ago, I didn't have any corporate clients out here. I don't have any contacts or anything. So I just was like, I'm just going to help writers because that's who I like to spend time with. End of subject.
Nice.
And I'm going to develop my life into this place where I write with writers so that I write my books. My books come out. They don't just sit on the thinking shelf. Mm-hmm. So that's been 5 years, and I run the Mighty Writers Club. I have Big Help, which helps writers on an annual basis, and I personally love it. My husband sometimes will say on a Saturday, "Don't you hate that you have to work on a Saturday?" I'm like, "What? I'd rather be at a mall than with 8 writers." No, I always would rather spend time with writers. Yeah.
I mean, that's a great answer, especially for playing for a living. I think once you find what you really enjoy, you can be more creative. Yeah. Would you trade a Saturday to not have to be an accountant or, work with numbers or something else? Like
somebody would.
Yeah, fine. That's when that job happens. That's great.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I mean, for somebody, that's the fun there is. That's what they love. So, but it's not what I love. So I think a lot of people too, and you tell me if I'm wrong here, but as soon as you decide what you want, you also have about a solid 1.5 years of believing you deserve that or that it'll work. How many people told me you can't make money from writers? They're frugal. And I'm just like,
they're all broke, struggling artists. Yeah.
We're all broke, struggling artists, but it's pain to not be able to write. And it's helpful to have this. I mean, this changed my life enormously to understand my creativity instead of just being sort of forever perplexed. I knew I was creative, but some people are creative, like our artists, they have skill, they've done the 10,000 hours, that, there's meticulousness, and you're like, I'm not that person. So you don't know who you are creatively. And so that helped me enormously. So I love bringing it to writers because that's who I want to spend my time with.
I love that too. And then, I always tell people like, well, maybe you don't work with the starving artists, then maybe you work with the successful ones, or maybe you, you work with people that want to invest in the skill and they see it as a hobby. And so they're not trying
Right.
to get a return on investment. Like we all buy whatever it is, concert tickets or sporting tickets, or, you know, go to theater shows. Maybe this is their entertainment budget and they're writing for fun and getting help because it makes them happy. There's lots of ways to redefine that question
Right.
too, which I think is interesting. And I try to just encourage everybody listening to this show is like, you get to make up the rules. There's no rules.
Oh my
here.
God, yes.
So
because of course
I love
everybody
it when
would
you
say
said I work
too-
with pleasant people and people that I love, because man, so many people miss that when they're designing their life and their business. That's a big one.
And you know, and it's it is hard to feel like that's going to work and that you deserve that you deserve that
Yeah.
risk and investment in yourself
Love that you
to
shared
try
that.
and build something that you're just going to love and not have to retire from and not have to, you know what I mean? You're just, I'm writing a novel with 7 or 8 people 3 days a week. What's not to like? My life is great. You know?
I think that's the hardest part for people too, is that's not cheating. That's the way life should be. You know?
Right.
So it's hard because we've all been trained, you know, that we have to suffer and work hard and pay our dues and grind and things to be
That's
successful.
why
but
they call it work.
That's not true.
Mhm,
Yeah,
mhm.
no, that's not true at all. But one last question here, and then we'll play a game. What is the most fun for you? Is there a bucket list item or anything else that would be like maybe you've already done that is just like super fun? If I could have this experience as much as possible, or as soon as possible, that you would define as the most fun
I
for you?
think, you know, doing the TEDx was really fun. Just plain old outfits, and it was what's called a salon TEDx. So I produced it. It wasn't an event because in the pandemic, they
wow.
created salon speakers by invitation. So I had to produce it, but that meant makeup, outfit, set, you know, videographer, sound, all the things had to come into play. And then, you know, you have to write your thing. It has to be, you know, approved by TED and all these things, you know. And so I love that. And I love that little 7 minutes of talking with you know, I'm old. I used what do you call those things? A prompter. I didn't memorize. If you were an event, you'd have to memorize your thing, right? So
yeah.
This worked beautifully for me. But I mean, that's fun. Speaking is always fun. You know, speaking or doing a workshop is always fun, but that was sort of the best. It's coming out probably in January now. You know,
awesome.
they're just, yeah. So
I completely agree. That would be super fun. That's one of the things kind of on my bucket list to get there.
It's that mix of problem solving and, you know, being in the zone that you talk about earlier. But yeah.
Yeah, love that. All right, I spun the wheel. You got survey says. So I'm going to ask you 3 questions. We surveyed 100 people. We're looking for their top 5 answers. Number 1, name. I love that your name too. Julia Roberts. Name a movie that stars Nicole Kidman.
Cold Mountain.
Awesome. I don't know that one, but we got Moulin Rouge, The Others, Bewitched, Bombshell, and Eyes Wide Shut were the top answers. Name a good way to teach children the value of money.
Give them an allowance.
Allowance, number 1 answer. There you go. Piggy bank or savings, chores, paying for their own stuff, and taking them shopping. I suppose showing them what things cost. Number 3, this is for all the marbles. Name a place where everyone stares if you come in late.
A place where everyone stares if I come in late.
If you come in late, everybody will look at you.
A wedding.
Wedding. There you go. You got it. Number 4. Number 1 was church. Number 2, business meeting. Number 3, classroom, and movie theater also on the list. So nicely done. You win. It is a free 30-second commercial here for you. The podcast is yours. Any ways that you can help us or we can help you, I'll take the low-lying fruit. Everybody can go to decodingcreativity.com. Check out what Julia Roberts is into. And most importantly, the new book, Write Without the Fight. If you have something that you want to write that you've been struggling with, stop it. Quit doing that. Go check out Julia's book.
Yeah, master your creative process. And in doing so, you'll get freed up from the struggle, the internal criticism, all those things that keep you from doing it. So if you master your process, you know your strengths, you know your struggles, and you're okay with it, you're going to sing through the process over and over and over again. So that's what this book is about. It's pretty much me in a book. I mean, you really can learn an awful lot in the course of this. And then also there's a lot of blog links in here for more depth on any given tool or any given, and the blog is at decodingcreativity.com/blog. So
Anything we can do to help you?
What can you do to help me? When I have my debut, I'm going to have a debut Q&A evening for the TEDx in January, most likely. It's not yet scheduled. So I would love to just have a shout out for that and have people come and listen to the talk. And
yeah, those early views, likes, and shares are great on those kind of things too. We all have to kind of deal with the algorithm whenever we do something cool like that. So algorithm, reviews, yes. and comments and all that good stuff for the book.
If you've read the book and if you bought it from Amazon, go review it, because that is an important part of how Amazon treats your book, without a doubt.
Love it. Thank you so much for being on the show, Julia Roberts at decodingcreativity.com. I'm Mike Montague with Playful Humans, and we have a quiz up there. You can rediscover your playful personality. You can find out how burnt out you are. Are you well done? Are you medium rare? How burnt are you at the time being? Good stuff there. And we have some sponsors as well. You want to check out Benetix. They have concert tickets and stuff for employee benefits and incentive programs you have going on, and all that cool stuff. PlayfulHumans.com.
Don't wait for tomorrow. Live for today. Keep on chasing the sunshine and go out and play.
Go play, everybody. Hey, you did it. You made it to the end. But don't worry, there are plenty of more videos where that came from. Just click subscribe to Playful Humans to get notified about our future videos. Now, what are you still doing here? Go play.